5 seconds here. Oh my gosh, what did I do? I made that picture somehow bigger on my blog. Oh my gosh,
Even bigger.
even bigger.
Even
I don't know. I'll fix it afterwards, I guess. Oh, that's no good. Okay, so yes, we
okay.
are
I don't.
live. So welcome
We
everybody.
are. I don't see it yet.
There's going to be a
Hello.
delay on your end by about probably 10 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome everybody to the book club. I'm your host Dana Morningstar, and today I have with me Agata.
Oh, I can see you. Yeah, it's live.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
And we are going to be discussing the book called Emotional Blackmail by Susan Forward. So thank you for joining us. And I will have links and stuff down below in the description area after this video gets properly uploaded to YouTube. So here in about half an hour after the video loads. So,
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah. So can everybody hear us okay? Let's see here.
I
What's
couldn't
going on?
hear you.
Yeah. Alcuda Babe says she can't hear anything. It's like it's paused.
Yes, it's paused for a moment. Yep.
Okay. Blue Moon says she can hear us. Okay. So it must have just been stuck for a while. I don't know. Weird. Okay. Good. Volume's good. Everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So welcome. So I guess let's just hop into it, Agata. Uh, the book, Emotional Blackmail. I have my takeaways from it, but let's talk about your takeaways. What are some of your big takeaways from the book?
um. Oh my goodness, this was just the best time for me to read this book. I believe so because I think I'm in this healing stage already when I'm actually um, getting out there, meeting great people, and I can now see what's healthy and what's not healthy. So,
Mhm.
reading this book now when I'm actually trying to date some people and create like really healthy friendships with men, because my therapist is really encouraging me to keep doing that.
Mhm.
It was great. So, I think my biggest, and I think I will be coming back to it a few times during our conversation, is that healthy doesn't mean Disneyland. And like avoiding blackmail in your life and getting it away from your communication and getting away from people who are using that. It's going to be messy sometimes to get rid of it, and it's not going to feel comfortable. It's not gonna feel happy like in a Disneyland Cinderella of the magical wand. It's not gonna be like that.
Okay, so let's touch on that
But
a little bit deeper.
we can stand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
What
So
what deeper?
so when you say that healthy isn't Disneyland,
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
I think too often we have this expectation that healthy is supposed to just feel good. Like
Okay.
we should end up looking great and smiling all the time and feeling comfortable and cozy and sweet all the time. And I think, especially after, all the suffering we went through in a narcissistic abuse, we want that break, and we want it to be like just good and easy and it's just like happy ending. We want a happy ending at the end. And like you said many times, healing comes in stages, and healing, it's like this whole lifelong process is growing. And for me, what I'm really discovering lately is that in healing and in having this open good communication with people, uh, it will not always feel good. Like I will feel uncomfortable, and I can feel sometimes scared, and some things will be difficult. Like my therapist lately keep telling to me that it's good, it's healthy if I'm sad right now because I'm dealing with big issues. And if I felt happy, that would be unhealthy. That would be really crazy right now. So that's what I'm trying to say. that it's not a Disneyland, it's reality, and we feel how we feel in a moment, and that's okay. And
I
we
love,
pretend it.
yes, I love that you bring that up because I think there is definitely this misconception out there that healing or well, what did you just say? Not healing, healthy. Healing or
Healthy.
healthy is
Mm-hmm.
like every day is a good day. Every
Yeah.
day is Disneyland. And the reality is, you know, uh, human beings, people, right? We experience a wide range of emotions every single day. And
Mm-hmm.
especially when we go about interacting, when we're practicing these new skills with boundary
Mm-hmm.
setting and being assertive, it it can be very uncomfortable because we're doing something new. And
Yes.
there is that learning curve, and not, and like you were also saying with healing, healing is, it's a messy, complicated process, and we might have days where we're doing really great, and then we might have days or moments that we're not. and
Yes.
and that's okay as long as we're headed in that direction that we know that we want to head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And
Yeah,
so, and like you were saying with the book, the whole emotional blackmail thing, like the more that we're aware of how this happens in our life, and you and I had talked earlier today a little bit about the book, and you had mentioned a lot of really great points, but we were talking about in the book there's a lot of examples that
yeah.
seem very subtle, and it was so good to see these more subtle examples of emotional blackmail, because here in the live stream and in the group, we tend to talk about a lot more like major issues. And so
Mm-hmm.
like the subtle stuff tends to really fly. It can fly under a person's radar.
Totally. It's
Yes.
like we are almost conditioned to let it fly under the radar because we went through like all this extreme, blackmail and abuse. So we just so used to it that the base for normal is like our base for normal is completely different than other people. So yeah, we
Yes.
think, yeah, we think this is nothing. I can handle it. This is just a little bit blackmail. Let me be a bigger person. But that's really not okay. Actually, like this was one of my favorite examples in the book. The story about the woman that was throwing a birthday party for her mother, and her mother didn't want her granddaughter to be in a party, and that would be a condition. Like you have to tell Melinda, whatever this girl name was, she cannot come to my party, and if she comes, I don't want the party because she was rude to me the last time. And I was thinking how often those situations are happening in our life, in the families. Like maybe not in my family, like I can't, remember exactly situation, but I could
Mhm.
see it happening everywhere. Like, oh, like my girlfriend's going on, we're going to the club or somewhere. Oh, I'm gonna go, but if this person going, I'm not gonna go. Like that's already emotional blackmail.
Yeah. Yes. It's putting a person kind of in that double bind
Yeah.
position where then it's really difficult. And she talks about this in the book. There's a difference between setting limits and emotionally blackmailing somebody else.
Yes, there's a healthy way, yes, to ask for something. Set limits. Yes.
Yes. And we can touch on, well, let's touch on this now, and then I'll kind of go
Okay.
back and define emotional blackmail. But in the book she talks about with the setting limits, of kind of a person expressing like what they need, you know
Mm-hmm.
like for example, that birthday party situation of, I would really love to spend my birthday with you, I would love to see you, but this other person, this really makes me uncomfortable, could we either, and then offering alternatives, so we're not pushing them into a corner of it's either them or me,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a
Yeah.
thing, where it's like, can I meet with you ahead of time, can I meet with you afterwards, can we go out to lunch the day before, you know this other person just makes me uncomfortable, and you're just kind of
Yeah.
saying what you're okay with and what you're not, and then you're leaving it up to them.
What's crazy, from I'm a mom, like I have a teenage daughter, so I can totally remember a situation. My daughter came home and she said, oh, my friend, let's say Liz, told me I can be only friends with her if I won't be friends with this other girl, Miranda. So that's exactly the same thing. And I remember my daughter being very, very troubled about that, because it's so hard to choose between two people, right? And I'm thinking now, this is crazy that this was happening already in an elementary school. So we are
Yeah.
basically surrounded by it everywhere. It's like a common thing. It's very it's very small, but it grows bigger the older we get. But I think it would be great if you define the emotional blackmail, like what it really is.
Yeah. And let me just touch on something really quick too. I think kind of a quick way around, because like you and I had talked about earlier, is if we don't understand or if we don't know how to be assertive in our communication and own our actions, then anybody can slip into being an emotional blackmailer.
Yeah.
So it's not just like other people do this, like we can do it too. And so I think one of the big differences too is making it about us, like really using I statements. And
Yes.
so instead of saying, well, if you are friends with this person and you do that, then, if you don't let me move back home, then I guess I'm going to drop out of college, and giving away, basically it's giving away our power. I need you to do something in order for me to feel a certain way. But
Yeah.
if we can own it, right, and just say like, this is what I need, like this situation makes me uncomfortable, and these are the limits that I need to set. This is what I need. Then that person can either meet us there or we can figure out an alternative.
Yeah, there's something really brilliant about this book, but I'm not sure we should already go there. So
Okay, so let me back up and define. Okay. Back up. Okay. So let me find it. Okay, so emotional blackmail. The author defines emotional blackmail as a powerful form of manipulation in which people close to us threaten, either directly or indirectly, to punish us if we don't do what they want. The result is that if we don't do what they want, they will make us suffer. The blackmailer knows our vulnerabilities as well as our strengths and weaknesses. For example, if you pride yourself on being generous and caring, the blackmailer might label you as selfish or inconsiderate if you don't do what they want. And she talks about with blackmail, it requires two people. You have the blackmailer and then the person getting blackmailed. But in order for blackmail to be effective, the person being blackmailed has to give in to the demands of the blackmailer. And the only way to stop an emotional blackmailer is to stop giving into their demands, which in like any blackmail situation, these situations can feel so incredibly tense and stressful, and that like the ante is so high that a person feels like I don't have any other choice. It's like you pay me $10,000, or if they kidnap somebody, like, if you pay me $10,000, I'll let them go. But if they don't, then I'm going to hurt them. And a person feels like I don't have a choice because they're threatening me. And emotional blackmailers, it's kind of the same way of like, if you divorce me, you'll never see your kids again.
Oh my God, yes.
If you don't, you know, if you don't quit seeing your friends, or if you don't quit wearing makeup, then, I'm gonna hurt you. It feels like a no-win situation.
Yeah, but it doesn't start that big. So I love how
Yes.
she addresses that we actually start small and create this opening for the blackmail. Like we almost like a train the blackmailer what they have to say to us. And I think this is really difficult for us victims, survivors to hear, because it comes with just looking honestly and taking responsibility for some of the things we did, especially at the beginning of the relationships when we could still see maybe some red flags but ignored. Like we could responded in a different way, and we kind of felt it, we heard it somewhere in our head, but we ignored that. So it takes really, like, I guess it takes lots of courage, like being brave,
Yep.
and to look at it and say, hey, I did participate at the beginning in maybe not completely, like I didn't see the whole big picture, but I did participate at the beginning, and it all turned out into this big out of control, huge situation. And that's when it's really difficult to see it because you're already in the fog.
Yes. And like you're saying, manipulation is such a gradual process. And,
Yeah.
hindsight is always 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
this stuff happens so slowly and steadily that a person is not even aware that they're giving away their power. They realize oftentimes we think to ourselves, oh, we start justifying things. Oh, they had a bad day, or they didn't really mean that, or I'm making a big deal out of nothing, or, hey, it takes two to tango. And we just what we think we're doing is we think that we're working towards a solution, that we're
Yeah.
compromising, not realizing that we're compromising away ourselves. And then
Yeah.
things get so extreme that we can no longer compromise or even hang in there anymore because this person is, I mean, and this can happen quickly, even though it can happen slowly and steadily. It can still happen rapidly. And the next thing you know, it's like this intolerable situation. Um, and sometimes, and I will say too, I'm trying to think back to different situations in my life. I mean, there's probably the most recent one. It was all very much implied. It was never direct. And that stuff can really fly under the radar and make a person feel like they're crazy or they're making a big deal out of nothing. And
Mm-hmm. Like
um,
the charmers, they call, I think she called them the tantalizers, the charmers, something like that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and emotional blackmailers, I think, can also be totally fine and then flip on a dime. So sometimes it is slow and steady. And then sometimes they just do a 180
Mm-hmm.
where, all of a sudden, I remember I was friends with this gal in high school, and she was very controlling and demanding, just difficult, demanding. But when things were going her way, she was really fun to be around, which was why we all hung out with her. Well, when we all got our driver's licenses, she didn't. And we all had to drive her around. And she refused to sit in the back seat. She always
Oh,
had, yes, she always had to ride shotgun. And I remember one time and it was kind of causing a lot of friction between the rest of us because it was like, hey, how come she gets to sit in the front seat all the time, And so this one time, somebody else had gotten in the front seat and she had to sit in the back seat. And she looked at me and she told me, you will pay for this.
oh my God,
And
no.
I just remember thinking, like, wow. I mean, and that went, but I mean, she'd had flashes of that behavior before,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't, I guess that's what's so difficult. That's why it's difficult for people to spot this because there can be long stretches of time where a person's fine. And then all of a sudden that mask slips and that emotional blackmailer comes through and you're just like, wow, and something like that, it seems so small. Like, okay, well, I guess she can just sit in the front seat from here on out. It might not feel like that big of a compromise, but it is. And then it
But
gets to a
yeah.
point where she wanted to control who I was dating and who I even liked. And I mean, I felt like I had to answer to her. It became very controlling, very possessive, very suffocating. And so
So
yeah,
literally from just one little thing, right? You were okay, you were acting like a bigger person for a moment, and it's okay, you can sit in that seat, whatever, right? That opened a gate for her to use that, right?
yes.
So that
And
that's what she's talking about here, the author, how these little small things give.
yes. And you're right. And you're right. And so I think, knowing what I know now,
Mm-hmm.
that before that didn't even cross my radar. It was sort of like, huh, that's weird, or wow, she's ridiculous. But I gave in, but I wasn't aware that I was giving in. And so
Yeah.
now I just thought I was going with the flow, like trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep the peace. And I didn't realize that that was a problem. And so now it's sort of like, okay, yeah, that stuff wouldn't fly. I would either address it or maybe even just in the friendship early on, because that's kind of, I think, the fire. There's that's the smoke before the fire. I mean, that's
Yes.
pretty major stuff if somebody's trying to really puppeteer your actions and they're making difficult demands like that. Like, I don't even want that in my life in any way, shape, or form. So I probably wouldn't even,
Yeah.
I might address it, but I might also end the friendship on the same day because I
Yeah,
just don't want it.
this is actually one of the ways I wrote, my another, takeaway from the book,
Uh-huh.
that being the bigger person doesn't work, because it
Yes.
creates situation when you are being the bigger person, but this other person can act like this 4-year-old all the freaking time, because guess what? They know you're gonna be the bigger person all the time. And it starts with those small things, like, the kids throw their attention for like a small things and grows bigger and grows bigger. That's why I'm so happy I was reading this book now before I went on the coffee date, right?
Mhm.
Because I literally, I was reading it and I was thinking to myself, what am I really comfortable with? For me, what am I really happy to do? What am I comfortable, and what will be uncomfortable for me, and I can stand it, and how. And then I realized that honestly, like, I don't own a guy, even a hug, nothing. And I don't need to do anything. And when I went home after the coffee date, I was so proud of myself, because I thought, if I gave this guy like a full body hug or something, I would open a gate for him to ask for more and ask for more and ask for more. And at the end, I could see myself feeling, again, manipulated into, you know, too much intimacy, too much closeness in a relationship when I'm not ready. I just met this guy. I don't need to hug him. Like, it was just so obvious to me. Now, probably like 5 months ago, that wasn't obvious to me yet, that I don't need to hug people. So it's great. I love it. So I'm not willing right now to be the bigger person or to compromise on the small things, because I know this will grow.
It's a slippery slope.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yes.
And like you were saying with dating, because I'm a big fan of that first date being a coffee date, because
Mm-hmm.
I've been in that situation too, where if you go on a date, and especially if it's to a nice restaurant, and especially if the guy pays, it's this, for me, it was always this feeling of obligation of, oh, I owe him a kiss.
Obligation, right?
Yeah. And, because I didn't want to be rude. And, he had spent money on this date, and it just was so awkward. And I don't, and so, yes. And so now today, I do a coffee date just so I don't feel obligated. And I actually get there early. I would get there early and buy my own coffee,
Mm-hmm.
just so I don't feel any weirdness that I need to, if a guy goes in for a hug or a kiss, that I would feel, I mean, I'm dating somebody now, but like if that were to happen, I wouldn't
We
feel.
can talk about me dating because of this dating.
Yes. So like you're saying,
This
it's
2 hours drive for a coffee date, and I still don't owe you a hug. That's what I figured. I love how she actually, we're gonna talk about it more probably later, but she said how much of us giving into the blackmail is just really connected to us feeling unworthy, inadequate, unlovable. And so that's why we think like we need to do something so others will, I guess, I don't know, enjoy spending time with us more or something. So here I have the guy driving 2 freaking hours from Delaware for a coffee date.
Mhm.
And I did have those thoughts, I did have like, wow, I should spend more time with him. He's driving 2 hours. So maybe we should have a dinner. Or maybe, I should give him a hug. Or maybe I should give him a kiss. I had all those thoughts. But then but that was only when I was considering what is he doing, and then I have to pay back for it. And that was coming from, I'm not worth it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Am I really not worth it? I'm such a great person. And you know what? Sitting in front of me and having coffee with me and just enjoying conversation, heck, it's worth it. It's for more than 2 hours of drive. I was thinking, and that I think I want every survivor of narcissistic or borderline abuse or any sort of manipulation to get to that point when they can say, you know what, I am worth it. I am really worth to be just connected with, enjoyed, just in a conversation, and I don't need to like pay for it in any way. Like I don't have to buy it at all. I'm worth it. That'd be so great, because I know how much this is shattered during the abusive relationship because I've been there.
Yeah. I really like that. And that's such a good example of, meeting this guy for a coffee date and then you making it clear of, hey, this is just going to be coffee, and him living 2 hours away and him making the drive to come see you. I think you just summed that up so well, because I think so many of us struggle with, oh, well, this person is coming a long ways. Maybe I should go out for dinner as well. Maybe I should kind of make it worth their while. And then realizing, you know what? He's an adult. He knows what he's getting into. You made it clear ahead of time. Hey, this is going to be coffee. It's going to be casual. If you want to drive 2 hours to come spend time with me, I think that sounds fantastic. Um, and
Yeah, I'm
then
not driving an hour to meet you halfway. I don't have time.
yeah, this doesn't work for me, right? And maybe down the road it would, right? Where
Yeah.
you drive halfway or whatever. But if it, however you want, but you set the pace in that, and he was willing to do that.
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
fantastic. Cause yeah, getting to know you, cause you
It's
matter.
worth it.
That's
Yeah.
it, like you have a lot to offer. And I think it's with everybody kind of knowing your worth and being like, yeah, you know what? I have a lot to offer.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm worth a 2 hour drive.
And I think
So,
it's more to it, like just to finish that thought. It's because it's not just I am worth it, but what I get to offer and the kind of a relationship I can really create with you. It's really worth the time and the effort and the waiting and getting to know me and me getting to know you. And because like if I compromise on my integrity, it will compromise the whole integrity of the whole relationship. So I won't get what I want and you will not get what you want. So if you're the nice and decent human being that you actually want to be in a relationship with me, or like, at some point, not right now,
mhm.
you'll be fine with it and you will see the worth in it. If you don't see the worth in it now, that would be great. That would tell me right away. He's not the guy that I would want to have another coffee date with. No freaking way, because he is not seeing anything valuable in it. So yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, do you want to go back to the
Let,
types of blackmailers?
well, let me hop in the chat and see what's going on in
Yes.
here. Um,
Oh
hold
my.
on here. And Alcuda Babe says, talking about being assertive, and says, yes, it's scary and it's not something that you get taught at a young age. And,
Mm-mm.
Agata, this was something that you and I were talking about earlier with being assertive. Is it's amazing how quickly, when a person's in a healthy environment, not normal, but healthy, when they're in a healthy environment where there is that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, people are being assertive, how quickly another person picks that up. And
Yes,
so
I
even if
love it.
yeah, so even if we're not raised with it, it's still definitely a skill set, that we can all learn. And it's just, I think, from intentionally putting ourselves in the healthiest environments as possible, so we can kind of role model and learn and practice these different skills.
Absolutely. Like I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, so I did not have too much of like what's healthy example, and the normal wasn't normal, right? So for me, like after the abusive marriage and when I started working and I get to see how the family looks inside, how people interact with each other, I remember it was heartbreaking one time when I saw that this is possible, because I saw this whole big gap between where I was and where are those people. I remember I like hid in the laundry room and I literally cried and I poured my heart out and I was hiding because first I was ashamed that
Mhm.
I don't know that. Like I don't know how to talk in such an open way. I don't know, I was a kind person, but like I never had such a great healthy interactions those people were having, every day in front of me, and the way they were treating their children, it was just amazing. But just observing it and just trying it out, yes, you can totally learn it. It's possible. Like the past, your family, your background really does not need to define you for the rest of your life. And if you are in a very abusive situation and you call it like awakening, I call it the same way in my life. Like it was like you've been awakened to something bigger, and like you really got what life is about at some point. Like I don't know how it happens for everyone, but there's like this huge revolution inside of you, like this awakening. So if you get that, you just have to stay helpful and be committed to your healing and learn the healthy way, and you can be surrounded by healthy people, and just heal all the time and thrive.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And okay, so she lists out some qualities that, or I should say, techniques that emotional blackmailers use to get their way. So let me go through some of these here. She says they will threaten to make your life difficult if you don't do what they want. They will constantly threaten to end the relationship if you don't do what they want. They will tell you or imply that they will neglect, hurt themselves, or become depressed if you don't do what they want. They always want more, no matter how much you give. They regularly assume that you will give in to them. They regularly ignore or discount your feelings and wants. They make lavish promises that are contingent upon your behavior and then rarely keep them. They consistently label you as selfish, greedy, bad, unfeeling, manipulative, abusive, or uncaring if you don't give in to them. They will shower you with approval when you do give in to them and then take it away when you don't. They use money, also fear, love, sex, guilt, or obligation as a weapon to get their way. And then she says, if you can relate to any of the above, then you are being emotionally blackmailed.
Yeah, I think that, like, when I was reading those, I was keep coming back to this last guy I was seeing in this. You guys know I did little mistake when you followed that chat and think that I was in this casual relationship because I was really afraid to, being like real with someone for a moment. But so I was thinking about this guy because he did that. He would tell me, "Oh, if you would care, you would do that. Oh, it's so selfish of you. Oh, you don't consider my own feelings. And I was at the time when I was already setting up some boundaries. So I remember I said to him, like, when you do that, you actually pushing my boundaries, and I really don't like when you do that." And he responded to me, and it was brilliant because he was so freaking smart in doing it. I guess he was trained almost. I have no idea how smart they are in it. But he said, what about my boundaries? My boundaries right now are being pushed too. And you are so focused just on your own boundaries that you don't see what's happening for me. And you are so selfish, so self-centered. And the way he was saying it, I was so receiving it in such a deep level. I totally forgot about my own boundaries. I would just focus for the next hour or whatever, listening and making sure he's feeling, that he is important to me in some way. At the end of the day, my concerns were not, resolved, and nothing was resolved. But he got what he wanted from that time with me, literally.
And I think that's the thing, with manipulators is, I don't think that they sit around at home kind of, thinking up ways to paint people into corners. It's really their words and their actions are very reflective of their mindset. And so if a person really feels like they should be able to get what they want, they feel entitled. And then that's why from the outside looking in, we're like, man, these people are so good at pushing other people's buttons and getting their way and doing all of this. And it's just because other people, we don't have that same mindset. We're very team oriented. So we're weighing, the pros and cons of like our wants and needs and their wants and needs and trying to work towards a solution. And for them, their whole world, everything in their mind orbits around them.
Yeah.
And so it can catch us off balance because it's like they just don't care about other people and the wants and needs of other people. It's just all about what they want. And regardless, I mean, she talks in the book a few examples of different people setting boundaries with emotional manipulators and or emotional blackmailers. And and that can work if it's just with certain situations, but generally that mindset, it's pervasive and it's persistent and it's throughout all of their behavior. It's not just in that one situation. So it can be exhausting because you're continually having to draw and then redraw the line.
Yeah.
if you've got a person who every time they don't get their way, they threaten suicide, they tell you how depressed they're going to be, they try to make you feel guilty. Oh, this would mean so much to me if you would come home for Christmas. And I
Oh,
just
if you lend me $10,000 now, I'll be the good sister that you always wanted to have. I'm like, yeah, that's ridiculous. I love how you say they are like not team oriented. It's all about them. But I also see they just really a child, because
yes.
the 4-year-old, when he's in a store and he wants the toy, he didn't read a book about how to get that toy, but he will go from first behavior, second behavior, whatever it takes. So he will get the toy, and sometimes he won't, but next time he will just act out more or whatever. Yeah, they're like children, and they're really afraid of not get like normal. I This is my favorite, another favorite thing. Normal, healthy. Let's say healthy, not normal. Healthy, mature person, when they want something, they will just ask, and they will be okay with they hear yes or no. Healthy adult person sometimes can have a bad day, can be really whiny about asking for something, but they still at the end will be okay hearing yes and be okay, maybe upset or angry, but they will accept hearing a no. Now the blackmailer, especially the kind of blackmailer who is on the narcissistic scale or whatever, like with some very strong tendencies, they will never be okay hearing you now, never. So
Yes.
they will exercise any kind of strategy. It doesn't matter if it didn't work for a week or something, like it, they will do anything just to get you to say this freaking yes. The no is not acceptable.
Yes, it's the equivalent of like an adult temper tantrum.
Yeah.
And they just have that level 10 meltdown whenever they don't get their way, no matter what it is. Like I was saying, like that gal in high school, she was told, no, you can't sit in the front seat. She has a meltdown. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, this is ridiculous. And um, yeah. And like you said, little kids figure this out at a really early age. They know the buttons to push, and they might start off like they really want that toy or a puppy or pizza for dinner or whatever it might be. And it might start off with them, making their asking, right? Like, oh, I really want this toy. Can I please? They try to be cute.
Yes, the
Right.
charming you first,
It's
the
the
charmer.
charm. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the charm. And then they get upset, and now boom, now it's a power struggle. And
Yes,
then it's
terrorist.
then it's crying, and then it's, you're the meanest mommy ever. You don't love me. So then it's guilt, right?
And the Punisher, like
And
if
you're
you
mhm.
won't give me the toy, I will not love you anymore. You're not my friend. Yeah. I actually heard a little kid saying it recently. He was really cute about it, but I'm like, uh-oh. It's I read all those things a lot as in this book too, as a mom, and
Mhm.
I have a almost 16-year-old. So like going back just to the tantrum, actually, I was kind of grateful that my ex-husband threw the tantrums like a 4-year-old still, because my 16-year-old saw that. And this is the way she actually discovered that there was something really wrong with her dad, because he's throwing tantrum like he's 4-year-old. And, like actually, she was probably like 14 years old when she saw that, and she was already not okay with it.
Mhm.
So I was kind of grateful for that. But yeah, I kind of lost my thought now. So you have to take
But
over.
yeah, yeah. But that's what they do. And I think if we can slow all of that down, because like with a parent and a child, when that child starts escalating, it's really easy to just think, you
Mhm.
know what, this is not worth the fight. And just take the toy. I'm just done. I'm just done. And, but then that kind of reinforces of, then the kid learns, okay, if I keep acting up, if I keep pushing, I'll eventually get her to cave in and I'll get my way.
Which type was it that they will try to make you do something by acting really nice towards you? I don't remember.
What is
Oh,
the
it was the
what?
carrot dangler. So my daughter, she did it a few times when she wanted something. She would like, I would come home and she like clean the house. she's putting everything away, and she's telling me, Mom, you look so good today. And then all my friends going out there, can I go to the mall with them, like things like that. So I have to say, like, as a parent, like, and I have to be responsible, there was a time when I would just say, yeah, because first of all, there was not a big deal for me to let her go to the mall with her friends. That wasn't an issue. But then, at some point she wanted to go to this big party, and I said no. And she's like, but I cleaned the house, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw the pattern, and I said, look, I appreciate you cleaning the house. That's great. But if you want to ask for something, just ask for it, because you cleaning the house will not make me tell yes if I don't want you to go somewhere. I will only say yes when I'm okay with you going there, and no when no. And she was really upset with me, and she's like, I will never clean the house for you again. And I'm like, yes, you will. But it's sometimes you just have to, it takes time, but you have to see the pattern, and you have to actually, that's when you have to take responsibility for your interaction, participation in that unhealthy way of communicating, that you gave in because it was fine, it was comfortable, and you didn't see the whole big picture. Like for me, before, her cleaning being nice to me wasn't a big deal, and then it became a big deal because she thought that's the way to get me to say yes. And moms of teenager needs to be aware of those kind of things.
And I think that's, making that clear, because she's cleaning that house, and it's not out of her doing something nice, right? It's out of obligation,
Yes.
her trying to get you to feel obligated to then repay that. And so I think teaching that lesson to kids too, of if you're going to do something nice for somebody, you do it without strings attached. Because if there's strings attached of, well, but you know what, I clean the house, therefore you owe me, then that's manipulative and it's not cool. So
she's growing, between two parents, because we counter-parent. Her dad is narcissistic. So in his house, this is actually a very appropriate way to deal with things. Like, it's always something for something. There is never just, I can ask you and you will do it for me. It just, that doesn't happen like this. Maybe when they have a really good day, they will give her something without her doing something. So, I think especially like if you are parenting with the narcissist as the other parent, you need to be so clear on, like have knowledge and information, like how it works, like all the different patterns of like manipulating behavior. And really, when you see something like this with your children, don't make it wrong, because you know what, this is the way they try to survive in the other parent house, right? Don't punish them for it, but just try to work it out in a way that they will see that this is really not necessary. And guess what? This is really not healthy, because I'm happy to say yes to the things that are good for you. And you should, I'm your parent. You should be able to just come to me and ask me, and I should be okay, saying yes to good things for you. And then trust me, if something is bad for you, I will say, no, I'm sorry, this is not okay for you to do.
And I think, like you said, it's making that clear to the child, because if people do learn that way of kind of coping or getting their needs met, of, well, I'm going to earn it if I clean the house, and because you see this in the support group too, right? Where people are like, I can't believe, he cheated on me or he left me. Like, I've done so much for him. I've earned his loyalty and I've earned his honesty. And then they get upset when it's not given back. And it's like, you know what? You can't, there's something really wrong if you're trying to earn somebody's loyalty and honesty. And so us developing that kind of ingratiating behavior, thinking that if we give them so much that they'll eventually give back, not only does it not work, it also develops a lot of resentment on our end, if we're thinking, well, but I've earned it.
Well, I want to address something in the chat I saw. Just Lilith just said that she has never been in a relationship with someone who wasn't manipulative. I can see that, because like we spoke today about it before. And I can see that manipulation is so ever present. It's like a normal, normal way of interacting. You know what I'm saying?
You said, okay, I misheard you. So you're saying Lilith said that she's never had a relationship with somebody who wasn't manipulative.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what I'm trying to, because, sometimes we think, oh, every person I interact with is manipulative. There is something wrong with me. So I want everyone to remember that, no, that's not the case. You can be healthy and a great, wonderful human being, beautiful woman, beautiful man, have a big heart. But in the world right now, there's just so much manipulation in, like smaller scale and bigger scale. It's because people are really focused on being effective and being successful. And there is this entitlement and high, like on demand everything. Like, we don't live in a time when you had to like listen to the radio station for 3 hours until the song that you really like came in. Now you just go on to Spotify and it's there right now. Everything can be right now. So people are just so used to getting everything right now. And that's why we see so many manipulators around us, because manipulation works right now out there, but it's not healthy.
But I think, it's worked since the dawn of time. I think since if biblically, as soon as Cain and Abel showed up, then things took a turn. So I think it's been like this since the dawn of time, but with technology and with the internet, and the more people, it's so easy for, like you're saying, it's so easy for us to live in this instant gratification culture. It's so easy and understandable that people want to get their needs met, and they want to get those needs met now, that manipulation, I think, really has grown substantially.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news about that, the upside to all this technology and all of this, is it makes having these conversations about manipulation and healthy boundaries and understanding all of this so much better. Because before, we were all left to kind of figure this out on our
own.
In the dark. So now at least we can, connect, and everybody can kind of share their lessons and share how, their aha moments and all that. So speaking of which, I wanted to touch back to the author makes the point between the difference between manipulation and miscommunication. Because
I love that. Yes,
I do
go
too.
for it.
Because like Lilith was saying, she's like, all of the relationships I've been in have involved a lot of manipulation. And I think in kind of Agata, what you were saying too earlier is this stuff it tends to start off in ways that we might not even be aware of. And so if a person has this pattern in their life of that they keep having these relationships with manipulative people, it's not that you're cursed. It's that there's pieces of the puzzle that you're missing. Once your eyes are open to what manipulation is and the justifications that we've been giving early on, then the game starts changing. Your life starts changing because you're just more aware of it a lot further upstream. So a big piece for a lot of people that they tend to confuse is that we tend to think that manipulation is miscommunication, and it's not the same thing at all. And so she goes on to say, in relationships, that if we're keeping our focus on the other person's needs at the expense of our own, and we relax into that temporary illusion of safety that we've created for ourselves by giving in to them, then we've avoided conflict and confrontation and the chance at a healthy relationship. So if we think that there is miscommunication, we tell ourselves that this person isn't ready for commitment, or that we are just being too emotional. And the issue here isn't communication style, it's a power struggle.
Yeah.
And the only way a relationship ever stands a chance at being healthy is if you've got healthy boundaries, standards, communication, and deal breakers in place. And if we don't know what those are, if we don't have those, if we have this mindset that communication can solve everything and that everything should be solved, that every relationship we should stay in until death do us part, then that right there sets us up to just be dragged through hell. Because if we're just going to stay no matter what, no matter how badly they treat us, then that sets us up to lose like right out of the gate. So examining all that.
I love how but that's way later, but it just gets me now, how she said to ask yourself a question: where is it written that you have to do this or that? Like, where is it written that you should really stay until death do you apart? And I don't know, you know, being that struggle and being that abuse, it's nowhere written. So you can really just walk away from it. And yes, absolutely, miscommunication and manipulation are such a two different things. But yeah, we confuse those. In the fog, though, I think that lots of lots of happens when we are in it, and the fear and obligation and guilt, um, and usually who ends up in those kind of on the receiving ending of manipulation, usually the kind of person, it's a very, I'm gonna say, very good person, like good hearted, very empathic, and just with such a will to to make people happy and to be happy person. And for us, like I don't remember exactly what this guy said to me one time, but when I heard it, I was like, there is no way he said just that. Like, I couldn't believe he would say such a thing to me. And it was a guy, like, during the summer. He said something about how unattractive I was after all, right? And I
Mm.
couldn't believe, I was like, why would someone say such a thing? So I was sure that it was miscommunication, because he surely didn't mean it. It just, he said it by accident, because it's so hard. But he was just trying, which is crazy, because he was literally trying to see my reaction, like if I have lots of guilt in me or if I have very low self-esteem. So what happened for me, like, I was already at that healing stage that I wasn't like, I didn't have a bad day after he said that, I'm just like, okay, I don't think he meant that. I think he just misspoken something. As maybe I don't understand English pretty well, maybe I missed something. And I was fine. I was happy for the rest of the day. He did not like it.
Yes.
He hated it. He so freaking hated it. And I wasn't even seeing it. But after, how you do the post breakup autopsy, I went through all those things. I'm like, I was such a difficult target for this guy. That's why he discarded me so quickly. It was just love bombing, love bombing, love bombing, and couple like little twitches like this. Bam, gone. I don't think this is going to work. I don't think you'll be happy with me. That was his reason to break up. And I said, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I wouldn't be happy with you.
It's fun. It's kind of fun and like a weird way to take the wind out of their sails. And when because I have been in a few of those relationships too, where all of a sudden things turn and that devaluing starts. And
Yeah.
even though English is my only language, I have thought the same thing too. I'm like, surely they didn't say that. Surely I heard that wrong.
Yeah.
And because I gave them the benefit of the doubt, it didn't affect me the exact same thing. It didn't affect me emotionally. And then they were confused as to why I wasn't bothered. And then the same. And then when things really began going off track, it was just like, well, we should never try to date again. And
Yes.
they were just stunned, like, wait a minute, that's not how this is supposed to go. Like, now you're supposed to be crying and begging and pleading and trying to get me back. And then
Yes.
once it dawned on me, like, oh, this is a game. This is all, like, I was hurt. I was freaking devastated. But then it was just sort of like, okay, I get it. Like, this is how you need to get your ego fed. I'm not
Yeah.
going to play into it. I'm actually going to play the opposite. And and then shortly after that, I went no contact. It's not even worth your time to even play the game.
Yes. Yes,
But once you
definitely.
see it, you see it. And it breaks my heart because I see so many people especially in the support group, who get sucked into by that. And they take all of that devaluing completely personal. If the person says, oh, they make a comment about their age or their weight or their parenting or something like that, they just take it it cuts so deep because they're so emotionally invested in that person. But you got to realize, like, a lot of them are sadistic and they really like to tear a person down. It's how they make themselves feel better. It's like
Yeah.
dating an internet troll, who started out as Prince Charming, but really they're an internet troll.
It's
And
just control and power over us.
it
It's
is.
at
It's a
any
power
cost
struggle.
for them.
It's ugly and it's not about you. It's about them. Just don't even let that stuff in.
Yeah, but I'm glad we talked about it a little bit, because this we can talk about the hot buttons, like the strong need for approval and like anger inside of us, being too sensitive, taking too much responsibility. Like I know that like what this guy was trying to push your and my buttons, right? Like he was looking for what would work to make us feel devastated.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the bottom about like you not, if someone will criticize me for how I look, I will be like, okay, that's your problem, that's your opinion. I like how I look. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I have my wonder body. I'm good. You should see me 10 years ago. I look way better now. I would say that. But for example, like if someone, I still have I think like I'm still very self-conscious about, am I a good person? Am I really doing my best? And God, if someone like attacks me as a mother, oh my God, it's really hard for me to not react to it right now. That's like really hard trigger for me. So, we have to know that they will just use all of that, and it's our job, it's our really responsibility to do some healing about those things, and to have less and less the bottoms and be really aware and don't give that, like I used to be the kind of person when I met the guy, I would tell him all my trauma story,
Mm-hmm.
and expose basically everything he can use against me
Yes.
to make me literally be this little puppet in his show. And that actually changed thanks to you, because you said that in one of the videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that to this guy just now. I'm like, I'm not doing it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole oversharing thing, and I've done it too, and and I see it in the support group where I think that's the hardest thing for one of the hardest things for us is to slow things down and to set the pace. Because like you were saying earlier with your date, and this guy was driving 2 hours, and it could have been really easy to spend hours on the phone with him, and then to meet him for dinner, and then to start sharing all of this personal stuff. And when we start co-creating that whirlwind, and if we don't know them, we don't know if they're emotionally a safe person or not. And then if they are not, and then they start using stuff against us, it can make us just really drop a person to a totally different level of low.
Yeah. So I actually
No.
I did little oversharing with this guy, and I was very much unhappy with myself that I did that, because it's just such an automatic still for me, and I have to like,
Yeah.
don't do it. But I did this thing, like I decided that I am so open about those things that he cannot really use that against me, because everyone knows it. I didn't say certain things, like certain things I keep very private, because I know that, like I just don't want people to know it. But I'm just ready to speak to basically a stranger about the things, I said to him, because I said, what, I was in an abusive relationship. He said some things about himself, but I said, I was in few quite abusive relationships, so I'm very careful right now. So I would like to give me all your information, because I want to check your background, right? And that's what opened up the gate for me to little overshare. But I got all the information I wanted, so I could check his background, which was really important to me. But then, at the end of this conversation, I was able to say to him, you know what, I'm pretty much open about things that happened to me, because I speak to lawyers now, and to my therapist, and to my friends, and I got really open and public about all the abuse I experienced. So, like this is like, don't mind me. This is something that I may address every now and then, because it's a big part of my life. Like I'm trying to help people around me. I'm painting, I'm creating this art show, to bring awareness. And this is really, really important to me. And so there was a little bit different context for oversharing. And I don't think I gave him many buttons to push on me. I hope I did.
Well, and you'll find out, right? I mean,
I will find out. Yeah.
that's the thing. And I think and if somebody does start using information that we've told them
And I'm
against
gone.
us, then that's a big sign of, done. Like
Done. Yeah,
that's
that's it.
so incredibly not okay. And in my opinion, not workable at all. Like that's just egregious behavior. So,
Do you want to talk about compliance? How does this makes us feel?
sure.
What's next on your list? Really? Because I kind of lost the track of the notes.
Oh, I've been kind of hopping around.
Yeah. Well, I liked how she shows how there is like the whole cycle of emotional blackmail. There is a demand. So the emotional blackmail usually starts with a demand. Sometimes it doesn't sound like a demand at all because it may be this carrot dangling in the air. And sometimes blackmailers don't verbalize what they want. I think that can be that subtle one when you just get a hint that they expect something from you. I don't know if you ever had a situation like this. I really didn't. I don't know.
Well, she gives examples. So what you're saying, there's either the demand from the manipulator or there's that carrot that they dangle.
Yeah.
And it's the promise of that future reward of,
Okay. Yeah.
if you, and she gives the example in the book, well, of a boss and these two people.
Oh. Yeah.
Yes.
Comparing the two women to each other. If you're gonna be such a great worker like Miranda or someone, yes.
Yes, comparing her
to
to
the promotion.
the old gal that had her position. Well, Karen worked nights and weekends, and Karen, boy, she really was amazing. She was such a team player. She was such a godsend. She worked so hard. She is so hard to replace. You really have big shoes to fill. And so then this woman was kind of in this scramble in order to get this promotion of, okay, I've got to work nights, I've got to work weekends, I've got to work, do more, do more, do more. And it was never enough. And the carrot kept being moved. And it was very much this implication of you need to work yourself to the bone or you're not going to get in the promotion.
She did. She almost did because this woman ended up having a body, pain in her body and in her neck because she strained her body, basically working too long hours and doing too much work in front of her computer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so then some other examples of demands that she mentions in the book are things that an emotional blackmailer might say, such as, hey, you know what? I practically live here. Let's just make it official.
Or, oh my God, and move in. Yes.
Trying to just move in. Hey, or if you leave me, you'll never see the kids again. Or I wish we could live together. I really enjoy our company and I just get so lonely at times. Or
I'm sorry.
Or then the example, anyone who's ever gotten a raise has worked nights and weekends. It's what being a team player is all about. Or and I hear this one a lot in the support group too. If you either have that child or if you don't want a child with me, I'll leave you.
That breaks my heart so freaking much because, it's a child. It's another human being.
But for an abuser, it's not.
Yeah, right? For it's just a toy, a way to get you.
It's a way to tie the target down because now you're pregnant. Now you're stuck. Now you really belong to them. And they know that. Like, well, now she's really not going to go anywhere because she's pregnant. Where is she going to go? She doesn't have a job.
So this guy, he was just, the guy that tried to break my self-esteem. He was doing that other thing because he felt resistance, right? With my self-esteem. So this was his idea. He said, why don't you quit your business and move in with me and let's have a baby? And I know him for like a month and a half. I was just like,
hell no.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? And he wanted me to leave. Like, I have a pretty good small business here. I love my work. I would never ever leave it for anyone at this point because I love it. So he wanted me to leave it all, leave all my friends, all my support, move to Pennsylvania, 2.5 hours away from where I am. Take my daughter with me. He was very upset that I wasn't looking at registering her to the high school already there. So my response to it was, maybe I can spend with you an extra day a week, instead of moving in. But he was working. So then he, he kind of bring up his A game. He took me house shopping. He wanted me to pick a house that we would live in. And he said, take your daughter. Like, I didn't even know. We went just to spend the weekend with him and we get into the car and he's taking us to house shop, looking at all the different houses he wants to buy for us. And, he's on the phone all the time. He's calling the agent and his finance guy, and he's buying a house because he wants to have this big family. And I'm definitely now going to say yes to have a baby with him and leave my business. Oh, that didn't work. So then he is, but he's still continuing to buy the house. I said, I'm just going to spend with you every weekend and Friday. I can work Monday through Thursday if you want to. I was like, okay, let's give him a chance. He's really trying. I didn't see the whole game yet, right? So then he's finally bringing like the best game. And he says, and this is how crazy this, it's such a good example of how no to what they want, it just starts the cycle of, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and I'm going to make you to say yes, right? Next thing he says to me, what if I put $10,000 on your saving account? It will be in your name, in your own bank. Would you quit the job then? And I was like, no. Like, no. And I was like, because I love my job. Like, why don't you get it? And
Yeah.
this whole resistance, like, from me, it was like unbreakable at this point. I don't know. I guess I was in the right place. If I met this guy 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would be right now alone, living somewhere in Pennsylvania, having no job, probably being pregnant, and being controlled every single minute of my life. I know that as a fact. If I haven't healed before I even, interacted with him, I would be right now in Pennsylvania somewhere where I would never speak to you or to anyone. I would not be doing anything that I love to do.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier today about these kinds of like the manipulations and stuff, and how when your eyes aren't open to it, how easy it is to get caught up in it, and so like kind of what you're doing, like trying to negotiate and trying to work towards
Yes.
a solution, but the whole situation's totally ridiculous.
Yes.
Right.
Completely.
And so it's like there's no point in even trying to be like, well, okay, yeah, I'll see you an extra day here and there. And this guy is just, pushing all these boundaries all at once. And
Now, with the normal person, that would work. Like even in the book, she says that you can negotiate condition, because sometimes blackmail will be something that you can be okay with some parts of it and say, yes, I'm okay to do this.
yes,
Like,
yes.
for example, you're like, that wasn't in a book, but it, like, I remember from my life when my friend called me, can you help me babysit my kids for the next 3 evenings or whatever? And like I felt guilty, and they wanted to say yes to everything, but I had other plans. So it was very hard for me, but to say, I can do only Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday you need to find someone else that. So you can comply with some of the blackmail, and because that will that will take down all the pressure, because that's the thing about being human, and I think she addresses it really in a really great way, that every time there is a demand, it creates some sort of pressure inside of us because we want to say yes. Like, even if it's not healthy, we want to say yes. We really want to comply.
Well, and I think like what you're trying to do, you want to try to find a solution. Like, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to leave this relationship. Like, it seems to be this, there's a lot of things I like about this person, and I kind of want to work towards a solution. But it was like a kind of across all fronts. This person's just trying to gain ground. And it was sort of like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm like negotiating this point and I'm not sure how I even feel about this other point. And there's just so much. And so they can start pushing all at once of, I want you to move in with me, and I want to have a baby with you, and I want you to quit your job, and I want you to move hours
And here,
away.
talk to my mother. My mother's on the phone. Talk to her right now. He was extreme. He was like an extremist. So,
Yeah.
but you know what? That was great. Having, it's crazy how it sounds, but sometimes it's good to have such an extreme experience, because after that, I was able to really connect. Oh my God, he was just like my ex-husband. So there was more narcissist, because I was living in this whole world of being a narcissist is such a rare thing, because that's what I learned in psychology a long time ago, that narcissist is just so rare. There's just such a small percentage of population. But meeting this guy, I actually Googled how, that was my first thing I started Googling, how common is narcissist, and that opened up all those links to your videos and Richard Grannon in NG, and I started listening to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a whole community of people who dealt with it. I am not alone anymore, which was, like, It was great, to be honest. I'm so happy, it went that way.
Yes.
Are you answering to someone?
Yes. Sorry, I'm typing in the chat here.
Oh, that's great. People probably wondering how they end up here. Is that the case?
Yeah, they're kind of wanting to know who is
Who
Agata?
am I?
Who are you? And yes.
So I am just like you. I was a victim and a survivor of narcissistic abuse and borderline personality abuse. And I also find out my father was really pretty much psycho. So, and I can smile today because I did some major healing, and it's a big process. And I just like, helping people. So I work with some people in New Jersey. I'm not a psychologist, but I studied psychology for 4 years, so I have a little bit of knowledge. But it's more like experience of what works for me, what would happen. And I love reading books. So that's why I'm here, because I was emailing Dana about how I want to be in a book club. I love reading books. I want to be in a book club. So that's why I'm here. That's
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, we should
Yeah.
get into your story. We should do another video. And you,
About the story. Oh God,
well,
yes.
and you can share more of your story because you really have quite the experience. I mean, you've really gone through a lot. So, um,
You
we can
know,
talk more.
this is crazy. Like I was reading now the emotional blackmail, and there was this story about the psychologist. Remember the Rhonda, the therapist, who is blackmailing her clients into joining her group therapy, and she's literally like chipping away this woman's self-esteem, and instead of providing for her client, making her feel better, she's actually, very damaging to her. And it really reminded me because, we as survivors of narcissistic abuse often meet a therapist who does that, who does not understand what we really went through, and there's some of that victim blaming. So it wasn't exactly victim blaming in the book, but it just, like I was thinking how hard it is to resist any sort of manipulation or any sort of, I guess, degradation from a person of such authority as our therapist. And I've been there. My first therapist, she was convinced I have a multiple personality disorder or I am borderline. And I was just so freaking traumatized that I was dissociating for a moment because I did not know what my name is and if sky is really blue and if I'm flying and I'm walking on the ground. So, but they're good therapists, I have a good one after all. So that's really good.
Yeah,
But
a therapist who's not familiar with abuse. The problem with that is I think all therapists think that they're familiar with abuse.
they
Just
think so.
yeah,
Yes, they do.
just like realtors all think that they're familiar with real estate. And I'll tell you, as a former real estate investor, I'll tell you that's not the case. And a bad realtor can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars and make you go bankrupt. And they think that they know what they're doing because they have a real estate license, and it has nothing to do with real estate investing. And a bad therapist is the same way. It's like, okay, you know what the DSM is. You've heard about abuse. You might have taken a few continuing education credits on it. Maybe you even did an internship. But if you don't understand it from the victim's perspective, you don't understand it. And a level of damage that they can do is just tremendous and horrendous. I could go on and on. I have a big axe to grind and that with that whole profession. And it
Yes.
really, really upsets me because, and what's frustrating too is I think that there's a lot of times, even damaging therapists, they might be very well intended at the core, but they just don't understand abuse. And so even though they're well intended, they're still causing, a lot of harm. So
Yeah, my therapist, the therapist that didn't work well for me, she literally he wasted few years of my life, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, because I had to do so much healing on my own, because I gave up on the therapy and so much healing. I just had to, I don't know, you know, I turned into spirituality, which really, really helped me. You know, like I became a very hardcore but very fun Christian. I'm a Jesus freak. I plant churches in the urban area now, but it helped me. You know, it was that's what was working for me, but it was helping me on this completely different level. You know, like it healed my heart in some way, but it didn't heal some of my behaviors and some of my patterns. You know, that I actually had to work with the therapist now. And my therapist right now, he's actually an expert of narcissistic abuse. Like he knows that. He works with victims of sexual trafficking victims.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like in this book now, there's this moment when, oh, the husband, remember the husband who's making his wife jump through the hoops because the dishes were left in the sink? Like he does those very extreme, crazy things. He takes out the dishes from the sink and put it on the floor. So she
Uh-huh.
trips over those dishes, I guess, or he disconnects the garage. So it's crazy because my therapist said that this is such a common thing. Like they will take this little tiny thing and make such a big deal out of it. So they will rob you from your adulthood. And she actually addresses that they kind of try to diminish you so much that you start feeling like this little child and you're losing on your will, all your will, and you can't make one decision right anymore because you really feel like you're this embarrassing problem, this little child that doesn't know how to do one thing right. And I remember how like I was punished for using too much dish soap in the house because
Mm-hmm.
I was, doing dishes in the wrong way. So it was like, and it was this small little thing that always grows into something bigger. So if someone, has a problem in how you, I don't know, spell your name or how you park your car, that is already something that can create a huge problem in the future. It's just amazing how it
Well,
works.
you start seeing those little slips, right? When people start
Yeah,
showing you, and that's when we talk about, if somebody starts showing you their true colors, it's important that we see them, and
yes,
instead of trying, and this stuff happens so quickly, and I've done it too many times where it's like I justify it. I'm like, I don't think I heard that right, or they must have had a bad day, or and anymore because I didn't want to be. I was waiting
yeah,
for a bigger event to happen. I felt petty if I were to
yeah.
actually call things off, especially dating. I would have felt petty calling breaking up with somebody over something like that. And because my idea of commitment was like, it needed to be like extreme in order for me to leave. And nowadays, I don't think that at all. But yeah,
Oh,
this
the deal breakers, like no addiction, like just those major things first, right? And now you actually see, like, oh, it has to be open communication, and it has to be someone mature, someone healthy, someone who knows how to handle anger. Like the deal breakers now becomes very specific, right?
yeah,
Yeah, totally.
it
And
does.
it's crazy how each time we comply, we really train them to go for it and go for it and go for it, and then we end up at this moment when we really, really lose our own integrity. Like for me, lots of healing was about discovering my integrity. So I love this whole chapter for, she wrote about how integrity is the sense of wholeness. And it's
Mhm.
really where everything that you want to do, everything that you believe in, and it's inside of that, everything that you hold as true, and everything that you hold as value in your life. It's your integrity. It's what really make you to be this unique person. And if you stand up for all those things, you will not be such a easy victim to any sort of blackmail. And every time you comply with a blackmailer, you are chipping away a little piece of that integrity. So that like just getting that like if every person just got that part that, like I call it in my own words, like, and I keep telling it to my daughter a lot, all you need to do is live the life out of your heart. So you really are connected to what's in your heart, because she asks me sometimes, is that the right thing to do to say this to this boy? I'm like, because she's a very attractive, popular girl, and lots of boys, high school boys, they try to manipulate her to have sex with them. And there was some sort of emotional blackmail going on about it. Oh, if you liked me, you would do that.
Yeah.
And she's not even 16 years old, and she has to deal with all that pressure. So she comes to me once in a while. I mean, actually often, but not more often. But she's like, is it a right thing to say this? Is it the right thing to say that? And I keep, I would say something like this, but what really matters is that true to you? Is that what you think is true to you? It's in your heart. Do you think that's the right thing to say? So that's what integrity is, being this true and honest person to yourself. And also, I think it's a big part of integrity, being okay with all the feelings you have, because when you will say no to someone and they will walk away, and maybe you thought they were attractive, or I don't know, your mother will get upset with you, you say no. It's a natural thing to be upset, and you should be okay to be upset for a moment and just stand it. Yeah, I'm still just want to talk about the positive part, like how to withhold it and manage it, because I think that's not that hard.
Well, and I think it kind of boils down to like, so having that integrity, having that wholeness is, it goes hand in hand with living an authentic life. And
Yes.
when we're living in our authenticity, we're in that alignment. So we're saying yes when we mean yes. We're saying no when we mean no. If something's not working for us, we're asserting ourselves. We realize that our wants and our needs and our feelings matter, and we're bringing it up, and then kind of letting other people know, like, this is kind of where we stand, and either they meet us there, or then we take some sort of corrective action. We might end up kind of addressing it again, or we end up maybe go low contact or have less contact, or maybe we even just kind of, maybe they're a great person, but we have this realization of, oh, I thought this person was like my best friend, but really they're more of an acquaintance. And so then we move people to different rings in our life instead of having everybody that we like in our inner circle. It's just kind of, it's based on how they treat us, and if it's with dignity and respect, and if there's with that connection there, and there's just a lot of factors at play, I guess is what I'm saying. But then, the book, and I talked about this the other day, this book, Emotional Blackmail, she's the gal that coined the phrase fog, the fear, obligation, guilt.
I realized that. I thought it was you for a moment, but then I realized that she's a great psychologist. And you know what? Every example she gave, like how she works with the clients, and some of the examples were extreme, like threatening the poor woman, if you leave me, I will kill myself, and actually overdosing, in the relationship, which I was thinking this guy is completely borderline, right? That was my thinking. But she works with each of those clients, and she really look at two things each time in those helping the client to win their own authenticity, and to be really who they are. And then she also works with them to transform that relationship out of the blackmail into the healthy and open and constructive communication.
See, this was my concern with the book, though, is that it's very common for manipulators to get into therapy and and to do the part of changing. So when I was reading the book, I kept thinking, are they, because some of the examples were so just out, like, to me, like no brainer deal breakers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to
I wrote here thing. I was like, I would just leave right away. I wouldn't even
Yeah,
go
like
to the therapy.
I would not put up with that at all. And I think it's outrageous that anybody even would. But you know, but I guess it concerns me, couples counseling with a manipulator, because it's not the behavior, it's the mindset. And
Yeah.
you can deal with that behavior one by one, but it's like playing that game whack-a-mole. You've got problematic behavior that comes up, you whack it down. Okay, you won that little battle. But that's the thing, is a relationship shouldn't be a battle, it should be teamwork. And so if it's this consistent power struggle where this person's emotionally blackmailing you, to me that's just not even workable. Like, that's because they're not team oriented, you know?
They're not. And some of that blackmail was just straight verbal psychological abuse.
Yes,
Like,
I
for
agree.
examples. And I was just like, why would she even go to therapy and try to recover this relationship? There was nothing to recover in that
I
relationship.
agree. And what chapped me is then the therapist is working towards a solution. And it's
Yeah,
like,
but I think she had really two solutions. And I think that's what I appreciate about that. Like her, always the first interest was the client interest. And I think she like this
yes,
woman, remember the woman who was abused by the father and the whole family was literally psychologically abusing this poor woman, gaslighting her into, no, that never
yes,
happened, you have a problem. And I so relate to that because that was my part of story. Probably everyone in the chat relates to it because we were always made to be the crazy ones. So this is a total straight, very damaging, severe psychological abuse. And she's willing to work with the family. She invites those people. If I was a therapist, which I'm not, thank God, I would say, don't even talk to those people. Walk away. No contact. Whole family, they crazy. You have to stand up for yourself. It's not healthy for you to try. So I don't know. She was probably having different experience. Maybe she would know what going no contact without trying, would impact, how it would impact really this woman. Maybe that's the place she was looking. So.
well, I think it's important because when a person's in a relationship like this, they're still thinking about it as, well, this is just somehow still within the realm of like normal workable behavior. And I think it's important, especially if there's abuse, like the gaslighting from the family, like psychological and emotional abuse. I think it's important for a therapist to point it out and just say, I just want you to be aware that this is emotional and psychological abuse. If you want to stay, if you want to try to, and then because obviously the person needs to make up their own mind. The therapist shouldn't be deciding what the client does, right? But
Yeah.
um, I think because people aren't aware that it's a problem because they've been living in this for so long. So that's kind of my concern, is if it's sort of like, well, yes, everything is workable and we'll continue to work towards a solution. And there's some like major stuff going on. Even, I mean, if the person wants to work towards a solution, that's fine. But I still think it needs to be brought up of just kind of FYI, let's have the discussion about what emotional and psychological abuse is.
Yeah, and they were making this woman to be completely scapegoat, they call it, right? Like
Yeah.
it was terrible. Like the whole stress and pressure was on this poor woman, literally. For the rest of the family to be happy, she had to hold on the secret, and she was the only one that actually wanted to speak up and have a breakthrough. And this is so crazy because I think we see it a lot in a group, and just like in life, that every time a victim wants to speak out about the abuse, the first reaction is everyone tries to shush them, instead
Yes.
of supporting their bravery. Because I mean, when people are coming out now and saying, hey, this guy was sexually harassing me 7 years ago, everyone has a problem. Why did you write 7 years ago? Guess what? Because I was in a freaking fog for 7 years, and I was dealing with all this shame and how it impacted me. And maybe you don't know, like for 3 years, I had a hard time to getting out of my bed. But everyone is always blaming not everyone, but mostly the victim is still being blamed about, oh, you waited 7 years, and you could just stop, forget about it, don't say anything about it, right?
Yes. So
So,
let me recap a little bit. So in the book, the example is there's a woman who's was abused by her father, and all of her siblings are denying the abuse. That never happened. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Dad had a bad childhood. How dare you talk bad about him? And she was this ongoing mental anguish of, they're telling me that I'm wrong, that I'm misremembering things, that this never happened, that it's all me, but I know what happened to me. And so then she was basically kind of painted into this corner of, you need to choose. What do you want? Do you want a relationship with us, or do you want to hold on to your reality?
Yeah.
And what was her choice? Did she end up going no contact? I don't remember.
Well, she got really lots of support from her therapist. She decided to have a conversation with her family in the hospital, because she said to pick
You're breaking
the good set. Well, her therapist invited her to pick the right settings when she will feel safe. So she invited her family to come and talk with her in the hospital, and the therapist was there. And ultimately, she chose to stand up for her reality. And I think her family rejected her ultimately. And that was the case there. So that when I was reading it, that was when I was thinking, that the healthy is not always a happy ending. So there will not always be peace in a relationship. And for us, this is more common because we do need to go no contact. Even if it's a mother, we do need to go no contact if there's an abuse. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about this in the live stream last night. I think it's really important that people, my big thing is autonomy. I think it's really important for every single living creature to have autonomy over themselves, and for people to be able to make up their own mind. And that's the goal with all of this. And it's so important, if a person does decide to go no contact or low contact or whatever, that it's their decision and not other people's decision. Because I've seen from therapists, I've seen it in the group. I've probably even done it myself, where pushing people into making a decision one way or another, and realizing, okay, you know what, we need to support them in what they decide, and hope that they choose the most empowering course of action. So another issue I had with the book is, and I see this a lot, I think this is a very common thing, is especially with mental health professionals, of like, I don't even know what you would call it, psychoanalyzing, I guess, the manipulator's behavior. And I think that's a really dangerous course of action, because we don't know what they're thinking. We're not privy to their thoughts and their feelings. And if a person has a pattern of lying, you don't even know. Like, it's so easy for another person to work up all of these connections that sound really good. Oh, this person has attachment issues because his mother was an alcoholic and his father wasn't around, and all of
that doesn't change the abuse.
It doesn't change the abuse, and it doesn't validate their behavior. And I think about, if I had gone into therapy with either one of my exes, they would have totally lied about so many things.
And I did that.
So I just think that that's really slippery slope thinking. And it also kind of paints this picture of the manipulative or abusive person as sympathetic. And it doesn't matter, like their childhood, their past, frankly, it doesn't matter. It's the current behavior that matters. And that might sound like an oversimplification of like, well, Dana, but all of these things are connected. Yeah, they might be. Like, that might be why they're currently doing things. But here now, it's a moot point. Right? There's still consequences for actions. And it's about us trying to figure out, okay, what works for me in my life right now? Because you know what? We all have a past. We all have stuff. It's not there's no excuse for abuse. And I think it's just dangerous ground to be like, well, this person was afraid of attachment and this and that, and this is why they were threatening to kill themselves. And it's like, no, that's your theory on why they're doing that. That's the thing with psychology, is it's not a science, it's a soft science. And it's so dangerous when we start creating these theories and then passing them off as absolute fact. I think you're on really dangerous ground, because you don't know if that person's an accurate historian, and you don't even know, like, there's so many other factors at play. I see this on shows too, with like serial killers and whatever, and they're like, oh well, his, this person had a really abusive father and this, and it's like, but you know what, I can show you a lot of other people that came from really abusive childhoods who didn't go out and kill 14 people. So
Well, we
I don't know.
haven't, I can only, I mean, I can only see it this way. Like, we have this very strong need to understand why, and we still
Yes.
want to see the human in the other person. But it doesn't really matter what happened to them, because I look at it this way, and this is my personal theory, and it's not psychological. It's just how I see things to make peace, for myself with that. At some point in life, I had bad childhood, and my ex-husband, who's a narcissist, he also had pretty bad childhood. I don't know how bad, but I met his mother. He wasn't happy camper as a child, definitely not with this woman as his mother. And I had, sexual abuse since I was like 3, 4 years old, very early. I had lots of crap happen to me. But at some point, I actually remember the moment when I was thinking about, I want people to love each other. Like, I had that thought as a young child. At some point, I decided that it's important to me that people love each other for some reason. I have no idea how. And you know what? I really believe that every human being at some point may have a moment when they have to decide something for themselves, and it's almost like you pick a side. And I don't know how much truth is in it, but I feel like I picked the right side because I turn every hurt and every abuse into something better. Like, I tried always to turn it into something better. Now, my husband, what he did, he turned all the abuse into more abuse and pain for other people.
Yes.
And that's just it. So he is not excused, because I could be excused by my unhappy childhood. And I don't know, I could do crazy things.
I agree. It's not so much what we go through in life, it's how we handle what we go through in life. And there's a whole, we could go down that rabbit trail. It's coping skills. It's kind of a person's, I think, innate personality. There's so many other factors at play. It just really kind of, it grinds my gears when people start justifying behavior and explaining, like, well, this person has this and that. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but it still doesn't make it okay. And I just think I don't know. I just think it's walking on thin ground.
Yeah. Well, in the book, it made sense in a couple examples, like the husband who was, with this little OCD thing going on, and he was bullying her into doing things exactly the way he wanted, or she would lose the kids and the marriage, if she would fight for the divorce. So in his case, they actually discovered something that they could work with, and this guy actually went to the therapy, and he actually worked on things. So, maybe there was a good solution, but maybe he wasn't full-blown personality disorder. Maybe he just had some tendencies, something in his past he didn't dealt with. And, I think it can be a case in some circumstances. And, maybe if you have so much invested in a relationship like kids, and she said that it's a big disclaimer. This can be only a case if your life is not threatened, if you are not being physically hurt, if you are not being abused in a way that you really suffer, like it's really something is happening with you, then you just have to leave. There is no reconciliation possible. You just go no contact.
And I really liked that I forgot that she'd put that in the book. I liked that part because I think this is the only book that I've read where somebody has prefaced what they've said. And they said, trying to hold your ground and have boundaries with an abusive person, it can put you in danger. It can get you killed. So especially if they've already been violent, I would add if you feel like you're in danger, or if they've ever been intimidating before, that you just need to, I think, back away and get out of there. Like, this is not workable. You're dealing with a very unstable, unpredictable person. So I agree. Like a lot of her other examples, and I'll go into another example here shortly. the more subtle forms of this emotional blackmail stuff, yes, I think the skills that she teaches, the way she breaks it down, she's absolutely spot on. So I definitely don't mean to criticize her book. It's just those points I see come up in a lot of kind of self-help books. And I don't agree with it. But let me give you an example that she had that I did like. And this is about setting limits. And I liked this one. So she said, two friends, Denise and Amy, they're in the same profession and they both get laid off. Denise starts freelancing and getting work while Amy doesn't. Denise tells Amy all about her new projects and how excited she is. And Amy finally tells her that she's having a really hard time and she would appreciate it if Denise wouldn't share how great her new jobs are going, as it feels like salt in the wound. Denise feels controlled and a bit upset, but she complies. Denise has the option to spend less time with Amy or to change the nature of their friendship for the time being. So there's no threat of emotional blackmail there. So Amy is setting boundaries and saying, hey, you know what? I'm really glad things are going so great for you, but I'm at a really low place in my life and I'm having a hard time celebrating your wins. And, but I just can't hear about this right now. Like it's just adding to my pain. And I like that because it's sort of, Amy's asserting herself. And then Denise, even though Denise probably feels like, oh, she can't even be happy for me, or what kind of friend is this? Frankly, I think if anybody has, a degree of empathy, they would understand that, yeah, that I could see how that could be salt in the wound. And so I'm going to kind of we're going to talk about other different things.
It's like all the married friends and people that have boyfriends don't throw their beautiful relationships into me, after all this abuse.
Well, I mean, to me, it kind of shows it's a certain degree of respect and empathy, right? Like if a person's, fresh out of a divorce or an awful breakup, it's insensitive and it's rude to be like, oh my God, my husband is so amazing. He just did so many things for me. Like you have to kind of wonder, like, who does that,
Yeah.
But but I like the fact that she was like, okay, that's a good example of setting limits, and because some people don't know, like they don't know where our boundaries are, and they might, the friend might be so excited that she's getting all these jobs, and she just might not realize how bad things are for her other friend. So, but then she gives the same example, and she says, here's that same example, but with emotional blackmail. So you have two friends, Denise and Amy, same profession. They both get laid off. Denise starts freelancing and getting work while Amy doesn't. Amy presses Denise to become her assistant. She tells her that she would do the same for her and that money is tight and that times are really bad for her right now. She uses guilt and tells Denise that she thought she was the kind of person who would help a friend out, and can't believe Denise is so selfish. And then she threatens to cut off the friendship. This is emotional blackmail. Yep. Because Amy is using Denise's fear of losing the friendship, and also maybe trying to instill insecurity within Denise about her being a bad person. She's using her obligation to her as a friend and guilt to press Denise into doing what she wants.
Absolutely. Well, when I was reading this example and it's pretty early in the book, I was thinking, oh, this book will be so easy, because we went through all this abuse. So I wasn't really seeing it first, but then, maybe people are thinking, oh, I dealt with so much more. That's not that important, but I love it because that is such a clean way to actually get what the manipulation blackmail is when someone is trying to use your feelings to influence your decision. And that is not okay because, once again, the healthy and adult person will just ask for what they want, and they can be whiny a little bit and they can be a little charming or convincing. It's okay, right? It's okay to be like super nice when you ask something, but they will not be using your feelings, So I love it because, we talk about, you talk a lot about listening to your gut feeling, listening to really how you feel. So I guess the best way to say when you are being emotionally blackmailed is to see if you start feeling some guilt inside of you or some obligation, or if you are afraid of something. And that can happen, in all the different interactions. It can happen in a coffee shop. So like some waitresses, I think they want a tip, bigger tip. And it's like, I did few times a bigger tip out of obligation because I was feeling uncomfortable, like just little, like small things in life. Like this woman gave me a very bad haircut a few months ago. I still tipped her, though I was like, I should not give you a tip. You were terrible to me. You criticized my hair. You cut it wrong. I don't like you. But the way she implied the tip, and I acted on it because I felt better leaving the hair place with a bad haircut by tipping her. I felt better than if I didn't tip her, because I would have a bad haircut and I would feel like I'm a terrible human being, right? So, the whole compliance, and I don't know if do you think that it gives us the dopamine shot to every time we comply because the pressure is being released, and do you think that's what happens too?
Say that first part again. Do I think what?
Do you think it also that the compliance in emotional blackmail, do you think that also gives us that dopamine shot? That's because we feel this like, release when we comply with the blackmailer too. And
I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. Your microphone's kind of going in and out a little bit.
I'm sorry. Okay. No, you remember how the whole trauma bonding,
The trauma bonding. Uh-huh.
it's all about the reaction, the chemistry in your brain, and the dopamine release when there's like something stressful and a pressure, and then when you give into it, you comply, you get the little release of the dopamine, and everything is better again. And I'm thinking that maybe even the small blackmailing situation, they may be already conditioning us for that, because we may have already done this little dopamine thing.
That's very insightful. I think you're absolutely right on, because it's the same chemicals at play, right? Like, and it's the same feelings, chemicals, potato.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
It's that feeling of, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. This is so anxious, making me so anxious. And then you're just, you feel like I can't handle this. I can't handle this. And then all of a sudden you give in, and then there's this intense wave of relief of like, okay, good. The relationship's going to continue. Everything's fine now. And so it's these little emotional roller coasters that we're not even aware of. But then because it's such, even though they're not huge highs and lows, but they're still highs and lows, it is creating that artificial bonding. It's that feeling of, we've been through so much together. But the reality is,
we survived so much.
They've put you through so much, right? And we've been dragged through so much, not aware that you're being dragged through so much because you're being manipulated. So I think I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on.
I think that's why it's so hard to, get out of it, even, like, because even if some of those relationships weren't such a like psychopathic experience, but I think some of them were really, it was hard. Like this woman, like the other example when this one woman becomes friends with her boss, and then she tries to manipulate her and pressure her into giving her this big assignment because she's gonna get fired. And I was just so I was like, oh my gosh, this can happen in so many levels and in so many ways and in basically every area of your life. And you don't have to be dealing with someone who is narcissistic, or really crazy, personality disorder. It's just someone who really wants something, and they will just go for it at any cost. So
yeah, I mean, I guess in my situation with either one of my exes, but Jack especially, had we gone into therapy, I just like shudder at the thought, because everything that he told me had been a lie. So he would have had to have continued that lie. I mean, he wouldn't have been honest anyhow, because obviously he likes lying, but
you would end up being the crazy one.
Oh, I mean, we would have all of us, me, him, and the therapist, all just gone down this merry path of madness together, talking about how his behavior is due to his time in the military that he was never in, and due to his cheating ex-wife, which never happened. And you know what I mean? Like, there would have been it would have, God, it gives me a headache even thinking about like how twisted up things would have been and how many we would have been trying to problem solve problems that weren't even real because the situation never even happened. Do you know what I mean? Like it would have just gotten to a whole fever pitched level of crazy town. And God, gee, it's so difficult because how do you know? I mean, my situation, I was fortunate enough to stumble across so much of his double life and talk to
The
his ex.
Craigslist, yeah.
But I mean, for most people, they don't have that. They kind of find out pieces here and there. And I can see how most people would think, okay, well, we can work on this. And just not even, normal, decent people, I think, really struggle with understanding how the depth of a pathological liar and how deep stuff goes. And, I just,
Well, we are conditioned. I think we are conditioned. Even if we didn't have abusive parents, even if we had normal like I don't know, normal. I hate to say the normal word, but even if we had like decent parents, we are so conditioned to I don't know, like try to make things like comfortable. I don't know, comfortable, and like we don't want the pressure. So we don't want to make people angry. We want people to be. We don't want people to raise voice. When someone is angry, we try to make things easier and better. We condition to apologize. What I'm trying to say, we always condition to make something situation better, and we are looking for the solution. Like, and that's almost like working against us. Which is really crazy. I mean, every time like a blackmailer or like manipulator tries to, put a demand on you or a threat, like you usually, try to reason with it or, trying to work with it, trying to understand why do they, like we're trying to be this really great human being with them each time and look for solution. And, that's not a solution. That's just more complying basically with their demand. And
yeah. Let me go over. She compares and contrasts. I like this. There's so many things I like about this book.
yeah,
She compares and contrasts the difference between people that genuinely want to resolve a conflict and somebody that's trying to control you. So
that's us. The first one.
yeah, I really like this. So she talks about, if people really want to resolve a conflict, they're going to talk openly about the conflict with you. They're going to find out your feelings and concerns. They're going to find out kind of where's the fork in the road? Kind of why are you resisting what they're wanting? And they're going to sincerely accept responsibility for their part in things, and they're going to work towards a solution.
Yeah.
And if somebody's trying to control you, it'll be the exact opposite. They will try to control you. They will ignore your protests. They will insist that their motives justify their behavior. They will avoid taking any responsibility. They will justify, argue, defend, blame, deny, or minimize their behavior. They refuse to be totally open about their actions and only offer up the bare minimum. It's going to be like pulling teeth to get the full truth out of them. And even then, you still only know the tip of the iceberg. If they do offer accountability or responsibility for their part in things, it's generally going to be insincere. And they're going to use any combination of fear, obligation, and guilt to get their way. So it's kind of sort of like they might, because I see people get tripped up with this a lot, where they're like, well, but this person said they were sorry. They said they want to make things work. They said they want to go to therapy. They're saying all the right things, and they might even be on their best behavior, but it's like, don't confuse that for changing. When you're dealing with a very manipulative person, especially if they've shown you already that they're a chronic liar, odds are they've just gotten better at hiding their behavior.
Well, when you are in the fog, you don't see it.
No, you don't.
You know that. Yeah, that's they really are committed to keeping us in the fog all the time. When you are bombarded by all the requests, and you are constantly in a situation, and the three feelings you have, inside of you all the time is fear and obligation and guilt, and fear and obligation and guilt, and then you back to obligation and to fear. You don't see anything. You only just trying to make it. And like she wrote this exercise, in the second part of the book, when observing, like going up above the fog and seeing it. I'm like, I was wondering how the heck you can get into the imagining elevator, go above the fog and see anything when you are in the fog. You cannot see nothing. You can drive, and it's, but I had a driving lesson actually one time in a very, very, very thick fog. Like, I didn't see anything. And I remember, I think we drove for like 10 minutes around the town, and no one was on the road. So the instructor was saying no one was probably out, so it's actually pretty safe. But I was thinking, how do you say it's safe? There's no safe. I don't see anything. When we parked back, where we're supposed to park, and I walk out from the car, I still didn't know where I am because it was so foggy. And, it's just now I'm thinking, this is how deep you are in it, and you really don't see what's true. You don't see the manipulation at all.
Well, it's like people, a lot of, Nazi soldiers, people that joined, Hitler's whole party, and people that join cults and things like that. It's a slow, slippery slope. And then all of a sudden, the war is over, and they kind of realize, oh my God, what have we done? They've been justifying this on and on and on, and it's just been slowly progressing. And here you have a lot of people who, these were normal, everyday people that were committing these horrid atrocities against, Jewish people, and against a lot of other people
working in the camps. Yeah, it was just,
they weren't serial killers. They were bankers and teachers and like normal people that got roped into this ideology. And then it was just sort of like, oh my God, how did we get here? And it's the same thing with the cult. When people start realizing, something's off, and maybe they're afraid to leave, or there's pressure for them to stay, or they realize I've got nothing to go back to. All of my friends and family are in this cult. And then they realize, oh my God, I'm in a cult. And it's just this absolute shock of, how did I get here? And
like, how do I get into 8 years old abusive marriage, right? I didn't sign up for abuse. I signed up for an everlasting love and a commitment and a trust and a faithfulness. That's what I signed up for a family, right? And guess what? For 8 years, I even didn't know it was an abuse. And I see so many women, like, you see interactions, this is abusive interaction. They don't see it as abusive interaction because they are still in it, and they are still in it.
Well, and it's so hard to tell. It's like with a cult. Well, okay. Well, what's the difference between a cult and a church group? Right. It's kind of that slippery slope where there isn't really like a clear cut divide. And that's how people stay. They just think, hey, I'm a part of a family. This is a spiritual group. We have all the same beliefs. And then things slowly start to turn weird, but people start justifying it.
But I think that it's already connected to what are we believing, Well,
I think if a person's not, here's the thing, is we all think that we have good boundaries and that this would never happen to us. I think that's the most dangerous thinking that any of us can have, is to think, oh, I would never join the Nazi party, or I would never be involved in a cult, or I would never get involved in an abusive relationship. Nobody ever thinks that they would be a part of that.
Yeah.
And because nobody thinks it happens to them, that's how they get sucked into this. This is stuff that happens to other people. And so it's really important for us to be really firmly rooted in, having healthy boundaries and having deal breakers. So, because it's so, like, these people, these pathological personalities, they hook a person. Maybe that person's vulnerable. Maybe they're lonely. Maybe they're afraid. Or there's that promise of a reward, right? Follow me and you'll get money, you'll get a promotion, whatever. And the ideal marriage you want. And then they just slowly start dragging them off the path. And it's really hard to tell when you're being dragged, when you want the promise, when you're taking action out of fear, obligation, or guilt, or out of that promise of, if you just stay with me, this time it'll be different.
And we have those beliefs that we even don't realize. Like, we have this crazy belief that if I act in a nice way, people will treat me in a nice way. Or if I just work hard enough, then I will get what I really want. We have a bunch of beliefs that, and this is the problem I have actually with education everywhere in the world, that we do not teach our kids, that some things that are, like, seem to be natural and obvious, they just a big set of different beliefs that were just given to them by the culture, by the TV, by the society. And we do not teach the kids to just stop and examine, oh, wait, why do I believe that if I work hard, I will always get what I want? Is that true? Is it actually a fact? Or is that just an opinion that I took on as something to believe in, and I'm going to spend my life living inside of that? Like, we don't realize all those things. Like, I, for so many years, believed that, bad people make other people angry. If I want to be a good person, I can never, ever make anyone angry. And if someone is angry, my job, I had this button, the anger avoider peacemaker. Like, that was me. Like, and like my codependency, it was that: do not make people angry. Try to make everyone be peaceful, like peacemaker. I was like a peacemaker everywhere I went. But it's because at the core of me, I had that belief. And I don't know from where, probably somewhere in my childhood, I learned that, if someone is angry, if I can make them less angry, I will survive and I'll be safe. And I had it at the core of me. And so it was like, it's not that only just people manipulated me to do things. It's like I've opened a gate for all sorts of manipulation, because anger, this I love this in the book when she says that trying to live your life and having never ever experienced anger, or someone be angry with you, or you feel anger, it's unrealistic, because anger is a natural emotion that every human being should have. So I actually add one thing to my red flag list. If someone isn't angry at all, that's a red flag, because they're not healthy. They are, like suppressing their anger. And
yes, the whole thing where she talks about anger and getting comfortable, because it's a valid, like you're saying, it's a valid emotion, just like any other emotion that we have. And it's important that we get connected to and comfortable with our own anger, and then get comfortable with other people having anger. So we're not so we don't kind of collapse and then do what they want us to do, because we don't know how to handle anger. And I really liked that point. And
yes,
for me, that really resonated, because I consider myself to be agnostic with a twist of Buddhist. And
that's fine.
yeah,
I'm
and
a Christian, but I'm a philosopher, and I love Buddhism.
yes,
Yes.
and so my whole thing, a lot of my more Buddhist beliefs have a lot to do with kind of making peace with the present moment, and basically not experiencing anger. And
I've been there.
yes. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I was pushing away my anger and that I wasn't experiencing it. But to me, I think I'd been viewing it for a long time as, this is a sign of like spiritual weakness. If I'm experiencing anger, and like if I'm really embracing this Buddhist philosophy, I should be able to kind of ground myself, meditate, be in the moment, and be at peace all of the time. And I didn't realize that was I don't know. That was a very eye-opening part in the book, for sure.
Well, I love that, because it's been, like, healing, it's a journey. And I think over last year, I've been way more authentic with my feelings. And I remember that it used to be that when I got sad or angry, I know what I have to do to not to be angry. Like, I go to the gym and I punch the bag, like really, really hard, punch the heavy bag. And then I'm so tired that I don't have energy to be angry, right? Yeah. Or I would use this anger always to just like, okay, if I'm angry like this at this issue, then I will make sure that this doesn't happen for my daughter. Like, I would always try to channel all that anger into something better, or fix it, or erase it. Or when I was sad, I would just like, okay, let me do what makes me happy, right? And this is great because I think she's not saying it exactly that way, but I think this is what she's trying to express, that every time you are not okay having some emotion and you're trying to fix it, you make yourself vulnerable because you're selling out like on some piece of yourself, of some piece of your humanity. So this yeah, and that's why it resonated so much for me because this year, like when I'm sad, hurting because something reminds me of something, I actually sit down and cry. I give myself space to just be sad and to hurt, and it goes away. I don't have to fix it. It just freaking goes away. And one time I came from work and I didn't even turn the lights on. I was so sad. I literally sit in the corner of my bedroom, and someone can say, "Oh my gosh, she's like neurotic. She has some psycho problems, whatever." I don't care. I stood there in my corner. I just embraced my niece and I cried for like probably 10 minutes. And before that, I was in the store buying stuff and I was really getting overwhelmed by how much I miss my family, important stuff. So I got home and I cried. And you know what? It was very powerful and very healing because it's okay for me to miss my family. It's okay for me to cry. It's okay for me to hurt. But I didn't see that about anger. And now reading this book, I was like, it's okay to be angry, and you can, you don't have to go hurt anyone. You don't have to express it right away. You don't have to fix it right away. You don't have to use it right away into something. You have all those choices, right, available to you. But there is one more choice. You can just stand being angry.
Mm-hmm.
You can just be angry for a moment and see what's next.
Yeah. I think for me, a big, aha moment was in realizing that I had these different emotions and that I could pick them up and put them down. So like you're saying, okay, I can be angry and I can express that anger. I can go to the gym, or I can sit with it, or I can scream. These are all of the different ways that or I can go have that uncomfortable conversation, or I can do all of these things and kind of work through that emotion. And there's just a lot of power in, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. There's a lot of power.
No, that's right.
There's a lot of power in that. Just working.
There's lots of healing in it.
Oh,
I think that.
And picking it up and putting it down and realizing, okay, I'm angry right now. And depending on like how intense the emotion is, or, realizing, okay, I'm putting like a stop loss on it. Like, okay, I'm going to be angry or I'm going to be upset. But then, in 15 minutes, I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go watch a YouTube video and I'm going to enjoy it. So I'm holding on to this emotion right now, and then I'm going to put it down. And then after the 10 minutes, the video's up, I can pick it back up again and I can be angry or I can be hurt. But that was a powerful thing to me to realize I have these emotions, but I don't have to be a slave to them. Like I can also, but let me get back to the types. So she has, so back to the book, she talks about the different, there's 4 main types of blackmailers. And I really like that she brings this up. So I think this is huge. So the first type.
We talked about it already, but okay.
we talked about it a little bit, but I just want to run through the four types. There's
go ahead. Yeah.
Punishers, self-punishers, sufferers, and tantalizers. And the punishers will punish us if they don't get their way. The self-punishers will punish themselves.
That's a borderline completely for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
If you don't do what I want, then I'm going to drop out of college, or I'm going to kill myself, or I guess I'll just gain all this weight, or I guess I'll just become anorexic again. It's very much holding themselves hostage. Sufferers are she says, talented blamers and guilt peddlers who often make us figure out what they want and always conclude that it's up to us to ensure that they get it. Like, I'll be so lonely without you, or they might even say something like, I'll be fine. Go ahead. Live. I really want you to just live your life. I want you to be happy. And it's kind of this oozing with sarcasm and insincerity. right? The message is really like, I want you to do what I want you to do, but don't worry about me. I'll be fine. You know,
Happy eye.
it's, and then the tantalizers are the ones that put a person through a series of tests and hold out the promise of something wonderful will happen if we just give them their way.
I will marry you if you babysit my sister kids on Sunday.
Yeah, the example in the book was a couple who the guy anytime the gal didn't do something that he wanted, he would say, well, I'm really concerned you're not as family oriented as I am. It's a big deal for you to really go watch my sister's kids. I just don't think we're ready to get married. And the carrot was always, I'll marry you. But it was always, if she didn't do everything that he wanted, then he'd pull that away.
Yep, and it was farther and farther each time. Yep.
Yep. So we had talked, let's see, I'm trying to think about any other.
Well, I was talking about I think the anger and the peacemaker that was in what's inside of us that makes us vulnerable. So that the hot buttons they can push in us. I was already there. Yeah.
Yeah. What we were talking earlier. Oh, that one of the big other takeaways from this book was so the whole anger thing. So when an emotional blackmailer makes demands on you, and it's like that vice grip tightening, and it's really uncomfortable. It's sort of like, oh no, what am I going to do now? That oftentimes, if we continue to cave in and give into their demands, that subconsciously we're continuing to tell ourselves, I can't stand it. I just can't stand it. I can't stand the pressure. I can't stand the fear or the guilt or the silent treatment or the anger or any of this. I can't stand it. And she says to switch your thinking, just telling yourself, I can stand it.
Yes,
And
that's my favorite freaking
I
like
love that.
total reframing. Yeah. I think it's hard to talk about this book from our perspective in like this the same order she went through. That's the thing we're jumping all over the book.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are at this stage of healing already, and we just start connecting with the how to resolve it part. Like I love that. I can stand that. I can stand any emotion because I'm a human and I'm bigger than that. Yes, totally. And the construct was so awesome too.
Yes, she has a contract with yourself. It's something that you can print out, and it says, I, and then you fill in your name, recognize myself as an adult with options and choices, and I commit myself to the process of actively getting emotional blackmail out of my relationships and out of my life. In order to reach that goal, I make the following 5 promises. Number 1, I promise myself that I am no longer willing to let fear, obligation, and guilt control my decisions. Number 2, I promise myself that I will learn the strategies in this book and that I will put them into practice in my life. Number 3, I promise myself that if I regress, fail, or fall into old patterns, I will not use slips as an excuse to stop trying. I recognize that failure is not failure if you use it as a way to learn. Number 4, I promise to take good care of myself during the process. Number 5, I promise that I will acknowledge myself for taking positive steps, no matter how small they are. And I thought that was so great because it's learning something new. It's learning a very different way of interacting with people. And this stuff, it does take practice and it does take time. And, um, you know, it's trial and error. And so as we're learning, we're going to be making, we're not going to do it perfectly right away. And so for us to kind of take some steps back and examine, oh, you know what? I wish I would have done X, Y, and Z instead, or, these kinds of things, and to just be compassionate with ourselves that we're learning and it's a process, and, getting our lives kind of back into alignment and reclaiming our power and control. It's a process. It's not a one-time event.
Well, I love how she puts back power into our hands with that contract because you literally creating it like oh my goodness, it's like you're making commitment and a promise to yourself. And I think that's when healing really starts for most of us, when we actually commit to it. Because, we can go to therapy for years and never get, heal out of it, never get any results, and never, move past abuse, and never really start living in recovery if you don't commit to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it happens. And it's like, there is a time when you just have to react to everything that happened to you, and keep talking bad about the ex-narc and the crazy ex or whatever. Like, there was a time for that. But then there's this moment when you can really make commitment. You have all the information you already need, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have all the knowledge, and you've suffered enough. And that's the place when I think when you hate enough what you went through, that's the most powerful place to make commitment to yourself. By the way, do you know that it's not the love that makes people change things, but the hate of the unloving things?
I like
Love, hate is the biggest, most life-changing motivator. It's
that.
when
Mhm.
you've had enough of something. It's not the lovey feeling, it's the hateful. You hate that wrongness in your life.
Yeah, pain is a huge motivator. I mean, it's like with any alcoholic or addict, like you got to hit rock bottom before you're motivated to do anything with your life. And it pain is a great motivator. That's one of the reasons too, like within
It's
alcohol.
actually hate, not just pain, because we are so used to withstand pain. We are afraid of hate.
Well,
We are
yes, I think for us, we
yeah,
need to get to that. We need to hit our own rock bottom where our lives become so unmanageable and we're so tired of the stress and the pain and the anxiety and the mental anguish that we're forced into doing something different. And
yes,
that's what's so scary in abusive relationships, because a person's tolerated so much for so long and they've justified it, that their pain threshold is so, it's the same. It was the same with an addict or an alcoholic too. Like if they're so severe, it's so scary and it's so hard for other people to not to like be like they need to hit rock bottom. I can't help. They need to just wake up on their own, because it's sometimes they're so close to, if this person doesn't leave this relationship, they're going to be killed.
yeah.
And it's so hard. Comes a point where you're like, I can't leave the relationship for you. I have to just throw up my hands and give you the tools and pray that you're going to have the insight that you need to realize that this is not love. Like,
Yeah.
honey, you need to run. Like, this person is going to kill you and they're not going to think twice about it. This isn't love. This is a million miles away from love.
I kill you, and then they're gonna say it was your fault. They had to kill
Yeah.
you.
And they'll have
That's what's gonna
zero
happen.
guilt. They won't
Zero
think about it a
guilt.
day
Yeah.
in their life. They're going to blame you and they're going to spin it around to where it's your fault.
And if they even, that's the whole thing. Like, even if they end up in the prison at the end, they're still gonna rock it in the prison because they belong there. They will. It's gonna be like they back in their family, because that's the predators
Yep.
are predators. So yeah, the only valuable, good option is for you to leave. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I guess some of the big takeaways from the book is, it goes back to boundaries and standards, and kind of just that so many of us have been in this fog of manipulation for so long, but we can break free from it. There is hope. We can break free, and understanding all of the different ways that manipulation can go down, and more importantly, how it feels,
Yeah.
and knowing that you have the power to start getting your life in alignment and realize that love doesn't hurt. You
And
know?
it's really like, when I look at all the different ways she suggests to respond to manipulation or to blackmail, the whole SOS, right?
Mhm.
The stop, observe, and strategize. Like, if reading all those examples, you probably want to be a little bit more specific after I say that. But reading all those examples, it was no brainer. When you are not in a fog, this is the most logical thing for you to do, because you can think clearly. Like,
Yeah.
it was easy. It was such a freaking easy solution. I was reading it and I was like, this looks like normal thing to me now, because I do it now. I can say, no, that doesn't work for me. It's, I can do it. No, I don't feel comfortable with it. It's like I know now how to say things that are authentic to me, and it's easy. It's not such a hard thing to do. But when I was in that talk, I didn't even have a thought of saying no. I would twist myself in a pretzel to make this work somehow for them. And if I had to sacrifice, oh well, because that that was the reality then.
Well, when you're in the fog and that person, that pathological person's got their hook in you and you're just getting dragged along, whatever they want, whatever they feel. It's all about them all of the time. And you're just not aware that, I don't know, that it's just such a big wake up call. But once you're awake to this stuff, it really does become, it's not this uphill battle. It's definitely an uphill battle at first. There's a lot of practice involved. There's a lot of kind of like post game analysis of what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What can I do different and why? But over time, this becomes so natural that we're able to easily and effortlessly address this stuff. We don't even fall into it. We don't get emotionally wrapped up into it. Somebody's calling us threatening suicide. We're just like, this is ridiculous. We hang up, we call 911. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, and frankly, we don't even have those people in our lives. Like, it's just things become so easily and effortless that all of this stuff just really becomes a non-issue because we see it for the ridiculousness that it is, and it really loses its effect on us. And if it does happen in smaller ways, like at work or situations like that, where we're not like a willing you know what I mean? Like, you don't choose your coworkers like you do your friends and even your family. Like, you can choose.
But even friends, it's like sometimes you meet someone new and you think they're really, really friendly. And now, like,
Yes.
I'm making friends very easy. And if I see a little bit of manipulation right now, I'm like, it's not, I don't even criticize this person. I'm just like, oh, that's not healthy for me.
Yeah.
Let me just
Yeah.
don't do that.
That's it. Or like, this just doesn't work. Like, and
Exactly.
you just kind of back up and you're like, well, maybe, if they're out, if we're in a group of friends, like you just distance yourself emotionally to where you just don't let that into your inner circle. And then if you're in a situation, like if it's at work or, whatever, and things quickly become intolerable, that you're able more easily to either address it, or you just realize like life's too short. I'm not putting up with this. And then you leave,
I
you know?
love that.
So,
Well, I wanna bring us a little bit to the book, and I don't. Do you want to talk about impact of the blackmail? Are we not there yet? We are still prior to awareness, PTA members.
uh, yeah,
Where are we?
well, I feel like I've touched on all the points that I feel are worth touching on because we're going on 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So I
Okay,
feel,
that's right. Mm-hmm.
and then just letting people know, if you guys want to read my notes on this book, you can find them on my website. It's thriveafterabuse.com and it's under book club. You can read all of that. I just remembered I should probably let people know what the book is for next month, but I need to look it up real quick here.
I don't even know what it is.
It is, oh, you know what? I think I wanted to change out that book.
Okay, then change
Shoot.
it before.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's do instead. let's
Do you have some
do
questions? See what people talked about a little bit or not?
let's do for next month. Let's do the sociopath next door. Let's move that book around. And I'll change
Okay.
it on my website here in a little bit. Because I remember I started reading
Version. I'm really hoping.
Yeah, I started reading that book, The Body Has a Mind of Its Own, and it was a really difficult, heavy read. If I remember, if I'm thinking of the right book, and I think I am, it's good. It was good, but it's just really heavy.
Yeah.
So, is there any questions or comments from the chat, or are we ready to wrap it up?
I'm looking and
Okay, let me scroll up here.
all the way up probably, yeah.
Yeah, postmodern is saying that she doesn't have an emotional reaction anymore to this kind of stuff. And oh, Freedom, I like that. Says Freedom Lee says, I hate the manipulative and destructive behaviors of these beings. I don't forgive any of their evil. I finally realized that forgiveness for me is letting them go and learning to love myself. Yes. And
I love that. Yes.
yeah.
I mean, I love the freedom when you got to choose what it is to forgive, like what does it mean to you. Because forgiveness is for you, really. And if you choose that, okay, for me is I'm just gonna let you go, and that's my forgiveness. That's awesome because that's what's gonna make you healthy, letting them go. Bye.
Yes, I agree. And I think, forgiveness, a lot of people, I really don't even use that word because I feel like it's so commonly misused and misunderstood. And it's oftentimes synonymous with reconciliation. And then
Forgive,
that can,
forget.
and I think, yes, and I think that can be obviously very dangerous thinking when we're dealing with pathological people. And so for me, appropriate forgive, and this actually comes from Lucy, and I think she's spot on where she talks about, forgiveness is if another person has that full and sincere accountability for their actions and they're willing and able to do the work of repairing the relationship, then at that point reconciliation is a consideration. You don't even have to do that. A person can say that they're sorry, and it's okay to be like, that's a deal breaker, I'm not going back. But for me, forgiveness is more about releasing anger. And like you were saying, it's for us. It's realizing, this person wronged me, whether or not they're sorry or not, doesn't really, it may or may not matter. It only matters in terms of reconciliation, really. But it's more about what do I do with the anger of the hurt that they caused me? And realizing, okay, I need to work through this anger so it doesn't ruin my life. And
Yeah, I think it's way more important to focus on either forgiving yourself or just find this inner peace with yourself about, just accepting that I did what I could do the best way I could do with what I knew at the moment. Like there was nothing I could do differently. And just finding peace in it and then focusing on your healing. That's way more important. Just take your focus out of there. Live from your heart. In your heart. That's what the miracle happens, in your heart.
yes.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I thank you so much, Dana.
You are so welcome. Thanks for being here and for being a good sport and doing a live video. I know it can be kind of an intimidating thing.
It wasn't really. It was great. It was really great. I think we have this wonderful community. So, I didn't feel any fear of obligation or any guilt.
Oh, good. Yay.
I did not get manipulated. It was great. It was a very joyful experience for me. I think I will try to be a little bit more focused and prepared next time. And maybe we can put our notes together.
Yes, I think that sounds like a good plan. There's always so much to talk about with all of these books.
My computer not working and just using my phone.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. So good deal. Well, thank you guys too for joining us and for all of the questions and for supporting each other in chat and all of it. It's just it's great. So hopefully we'll see you next month. We're going to do book club it's the last Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the book that we're reading next month is now going to be The Sociopath Next Door by Marcia Stout. Is that her name? Marcia Stout.
Just don't get suspicious of your neighbors when you read that book.
Yeah.
Don't call 911 on your neighbors.
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you guys so much. And I'll probably see you Tuesday if you're going to be on the live stream for Tuesday. So have a good night.
Good night, everyone.